basing all our well-being on things remaining permanent is something we need to take a pretty very strong and hard look at, because that is the source of our freedom, is seeing reality for what it is.
Welcome to the Happiness and Progress podcast. I'm your host, Danielle Craig. I'm an Emmy Award-winning journalist, international speaker, mom, wife, and you know what I like to say, just a person looking for more joy in the everyday. I absolutely love Buddhist philosophy, and that is what we're going to talk about today. You are going to be hearing from Pema, Sherpa, and Brendan Barca. They are the authors of the Daily Buddhist. They also happen to be a wife and husband team. They teach mindfulness, meditation, and Buddhist principles to employees at companies worldwide. In this conversation, we're going to talk about how, yes, life is hard. We're going to talk about how, yes, it's difficult to deal with some of our thoughts sometimes. Thank you guys so much for coming on the podcast today. I'm so glad to be able to talk to you.
Thanks so much for having us.
I guess my first question will be, what do you think a non-Buddhist can learn from Buddhism, from your book that is coming out?
So the Daily Buddhist, really what we wanted to do when we put it together was that it would have to be universal, in that it is really looking at people's sort of day-to-day struggles that we experience, whether it is our conflicting thoughts that we're constantly dealing with, or the emotions that we are working with. So insofar as we have a mind and we have all these thoughts and they lead to a lot of emotions, it really doesn't matter what culture, what religion, what even language you come from. The concepts that we talk about within the Daily Buddhist relates to everyone. So somebody who is not a Buddhist can access the teachings just as much as somebody who might identify as being Buddhist.
Yeah, and I'd also add that with everyone, we all have our own mind, and a lot of the book is about training our mind to be able to deal with some of the things Pema alluded to, whether it's negative emotions, whether it's our inner critic, and it doesn't matter which religion you follow or philosophy. Buddhist philosophy can help anyone out there, and that's what we've tried to do with the book.
Yes. Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. In fact, yesterday I was having this conversation with one of my close friends, and she was like, you know what I've just decided is life is just hard. I think that is just what it is. Life is hard. And I was like, I wonder if it's that life is hard or if it's about our unmet expectations. Is it really that life's hard or that we're clinging on to an idea of what life should be? And then I opened up the book and I was like, oh, well, there it is. The first two of the Four Noble Truths.
Yeah,
Yes,
life is suffering.
Life is suffering. Do you guys want to just, for anybody maybe who isn't familiar with the Noble Truths, you want to run through those for me?
So the backstory of the Four Noble Truths is this man's journey, which is the Buddha. Most people know about him, going from identifying that even though I have everything happening in my life, I have everything going for me.
He was a prince, so he had a lot going for him.
So healthy, young, beautiful, anything you can think of that we think is the source of happiness. He had it, yet he knew that he was subject to all these sufferings of change, illnesses, aging, and it was constantly around him, and there was no way of protecting himself. And so from that to really studying his mind, studying the natural worldly phenomenon, he came up with the understanding of Four Noble Truths, which is number one, life is suffering. We are all suffering in one capacity or the other. Even when things are good, the impending sort of dissatisfaction is always looming. Even when relationships are great, either we are separated because of the relationship not working out, or just death and nature happening to us, right? The impending thing is always lingering, the suffering. And that is pretty sad. But
it gets happier soon. You have to wait for number 3 and 4. So hold on.
So then he found, so why are we suffering? And what he found was the cause of suffering, which is the second noble truth, that it is based on attachment, but not any kind of attachment, but attachment based on ignorance. It's not so much that we love X, Y, and Z, whether it's our loved ones or material items. It's that we love it with this ignorant view that it will, one, give us lasting happiness, and two, it will last forever. So we are constantly disappointed. So that's second noble truth. But the good news is, because there's a cause of our suffering, if we can eliminate that cause, we can find end of suffering. And so that is the third noble truth, that it is possible to free ourselves from suffering. And the fourth is the path, which is where he lays out this whole virtuous, ethical way of living, ways of training our minds that can help us get in touch with reality and overcome our ignorance and find sort of lasting happiness.
Yeah, so it starts out hopeless, but then it becomes hopeful, which we like to say, and it's just the where Buddhism becomes that aspect of helping us. So it gets brighter.
Yeah, well, I love it because I think the first step of anything is awareness. And it's like, I think sometimes we can be like, "Oh, why am I suffering? Why is this so hard?" And I think if we have the first step of, this is part of what life is, and then we can move forward and through that. What do you think in the 21st century enlightenment looks like?
We wouldn't know. No, I'm kidding. I just mean that it's it's a big aspiration, and I think
it's enlightenment. There could be the big enlightenment with the capital E, right? But then on a day-to-day basis, for people like myself, people like Brendan, who are very ignorant, and we are in the thick of things, right? Life is happening constantly around us. And perhaps a version of enlightenment looks like being able to ride the wave without getting knocked off completely. And not, when I say completely, maybe we do get knocked off here and there, but we're able to constantly sort of maintain a sense of resilience and groundedness through it. And in doing that, it's not to say that we don't feel emotions, we don't feel anxious, we don't feel depressed, we don't feel lonely. We feel all of those emotions, but they don't completely take over us. We know this is temporary, this experience is temporary, and able to maintain perspective, hence we can grow from it. And love your thought around it, around happiness and progress. And that's what enlightenment might look like.
And I think enlightenment for us, or like an everyday person, is more of the path towards it, right? So like Pema kind of outlined, the fourth noble truth is the path, and in Buddhism that's called the Eightfold Path. And so there's sort of 8 things that you want to practice and cultivate, including ethical living, wisdom, and mental discipline. Those are like the 3 major categories within that. And as long as you're kind of progressing, like, to your podcast name, then that's like that's the idea, because very few people in the world have ever gotten enlightened. But I think that's a way to kind of take away that big E, like Pema mentioned, I like that, to a little E of enlightenment, which is more attainable for us.
Yes, I love that. I always say life is a practice. Like, we only have so many tools as humans here, and we can tap into them, and sometimes we'll do better or worse at different ones. I love the way that your book is laid out. Each day of the year, 366 days, counting leap year, counting leap day, I should say. There's something new to learn, and you guys, I love how you put it together with like ancient wisdom, but also really like fun, relatable titles. I'm trying to think of one of the. They're just really cute. You guys did a great job with that. And then kind of talk to us, the reader, in layman's terms of like what we can take from all of these Buddhist leaders. So tell me, maybe when you think about your book, what do you think one of the things that our society, like as humans, what is one of the things that we need to hear the most?
I mean, one of the things in our book, and one of the themes is in generosity. And that's one of the chapters we cover in the 3rd theme. And, generosity is a term that we've heard about a lot, and we try to act generous. Maybe we, give a little bit here and there, we donate. But I think what we're talking about in the book, and we hope people take out of it, is, how to have a generous spirit, how to have generous energy, and also just generous with your loved ones. And sometimes it can be so hard to be generous in time or generous with your emotions, the people that are nearest to you. And so if people can kind of like come from that standpoint, whether it's their relationship with their closest person or whether it's their family, then that's going to extend outwards. And whether it's generosity and compassion is like another theme within that chapter of extending out. People are able to kind of be these things. The other thing we realize, it doesn't just help other people, but the more generous you are to others, the more compassionate you are towards the others, it boomerangs back to you. So, and there's actually a page in the book about this concept called wise selfishness, which is a term that the Dalai Lama has used before. And the idea is that the more, giving and altruistic or compassionate you can be towards other people, the better it makes you feel. So, we're actually being selfish by being selfless. So it's a win-win for everyone. So that's one of the major things that we hope people take out of it. Maybe you have a different take.
Yeah, and one of the perhaps unique aspect of Buddhist philosophy is the significance of compassion and the generous way of being does not only correspond to ethical or virtuous way of being, but also it has a huge connection with wisdom. And what that means is, like we started our conversation by talking about ignorance and how ignorance is cause of our suffering. In Buddhist principles, and we've really worked hard to make that transparent and come to life in our book, is that when we can really start practicing these principles of generosity, compassion with our actions before our mind is changed, because it's easier to do things than to change who we are, we actually become a generous person, a compassionate person. But also the byproduct is our ignorance sort of dissolves away, because if you really look at it from the perspective of ignorance, that I am a solid self entity separate from others. And so much of our selfishness, jealousy, anger actually comes from this idea of I am solid and I will last for a long time. And same with things. I want my money because it's permanent. It will last for me. But then by chipping away our material attachment to our things, we also chip away our ignorance that things are solid and things will last. So it has this amazing sort of way of helping us unlearn these concepts that are actually keeping us bound. And on a global or larger scale, we do create a better society and better humanity. So that's definitely a big, big point that I think would contribute to human consciousness overall.
That's one of the things I had taken note of. And you guys shared this quote: suffering, humiliation, harsh words, and disgrace. These we desire neither for ourselves nor for our loved ones, but for our enemies, it is the reverse. And then you guys kind of talked about, we see this every single day in the news, Republicans versus Democrats, the US versus China. You guys give these examples. In this example, an opposing politician says something stupid. Good. A player on the other team falls on her face. We celebrate. And you go in to say, I love how you just you guys asked this question. Why do we do this? I feel like the whole approach, your approach was really compassionate. Like, let's do this with grace. Let's ask, like, why do we do this? So tell me maybe a little bit about, why do we continually find ourselves in this place where it's us versus them?
We can feel the boundary of our skin, right? If I hit myself, I can feel it. If I smack Brendan, perhaps I don't feel it as much.
Well, yeah, I would feel it.
Yes. in that very immediate sort of reality, we can only see our own experience. We can only feel our bodies. So that very visceral separation of us versus them is there. And then we slowly start extending it out to, it's not just me, it's also mine. Everything that I identify as mine. And as a new mom, I can definitely relate to my child falling on her butt, and it literally hurts me physically. Mm-hmm. So we have these things, and we're constantly trying to conquer and occupy more. So then it becomes my political view, my people, my neighborhood, my country. And the more we play into these desires of me, the stronger they become, and we become defensive. And then I'm sure there's also a lot of evolutionary reason as to why we try to protect what we call our tribe versus others, because that's so deeply ingrained with our survival and things of that nature as well. So much of it is ignorance that is reinforced by our own thought patterns, but also how our societies are structured too. So it's sort of working against us. And in today's world, the more polarized a discussion, it gets people's ears. So then we see more of it and we play into it. So it's a self-serving in this cycle that's constantly reinforcing itself. So it's nice to be able to ask yourself, why do you do it? And then so many times just that question dissolves away this idea of, it is true, I actually don't care about it as much and genuinely don't really believe in it as much as I would without thinking about it or mindlessly allowing myself to go into autopilot. So those gentle questions help a lot.
I think one of the things that, people feel really strongly about, their own views or their own children and their own family. And that's in a lot of ways, makes sense. And I think one of the things that we just have to be conscious of is that, everyone out there is kind of dealing with the same thing in their mind, right? We all have attachments to whether it's our loved ones or our views. We all have pain, we all have suffering, we all have hopes and dreams. We're all trying to figure out our own happiness. And so one of the things we have to kind of realize is even though, I'm on one side of the team or whatever, and they're on the other side, we still have to realize that our shared humanity is we're all trying to do this. We're trying to suffer less. We're trying to be happy. We're trying to live well for our family and ourselves. And so just thinking about that and maybe, being conscious of that can help to kind of dissolve the boundary between self and other a little bit.
Yeah. If someone was listening and they felt a little triggered, they were like, "Oh, wait, did I just hear like I get defensive over my political party or whatever it is?" What would you say is maybe the first step in this very moment to maybe de-escalate those feelings?
Yeah, I would say start number one. Don't worry about them. Worry about you. How does that make you feel when you feel that sense of defensiveness or any sort of feeling that comes from somebody else doing well or, those sort of feeling, starting by you. And then breath turns out is so powerful to just de-escalate things because not to get neurosciencey here, but whenever we are triggered, we're not acting out of our full mind. We're acting out of our trigger part, amygdala. Then it's all bets are off. We are operating from very little access to our mind. So just breathing allows you to sort of access the whole of your mind. And from that place, if we can really do what's best for ourselves and our peace and our sanity, the great news is it's probably going to be good for somebody else and humanity in general. So not even thinking about them, just think about you, but not from that immediate sort of have to be right kind of place, but from a more longer term, sustainable happiness and peace sort of way. So that's what I would say if somebody's feeling triggered.
Yeah, and also encourage people to think about, when you're feeling angry, when you're feeling frustrated with someone, like, yeah, how does it feel in your heart? How's it feel in your chest? And then like picture, it's all happened to all of us. We're trying to go to sleep. We just got in an argument or we're mad at someone. We just watched the news or something on, Facebook triggered us. Like there's a quote in our book, I'm paraphrasing here, but it's like the dart of hatred stuck in your heart. Like how you can't sleep. I'm really paraphrasing. It's much better than that, but that's the idea. And it's like, just think about that. It's like when we're angry and maybe they're the one that triggered us and it was like an hour ago or 10 hours ago or 10 days ago. Well, we're the one that are carrying the negative emotions. It's damaging our lives. So, think about that as you think about trying to work through your own negative emotions. Yeah. And they're moved on. They're already like whistling down the sidewalk, doing their own thing.
Oh yeah. This is just like, what do they say is the poison that you drink? What do they usually say? I say it about everything, so I forget, but like judgments or when you're triggered or any of these things is like drinking poison and waiting for someone else to die. You're the one that has the poison. It's not forgiving. That's where the origin of that is. But I feel like that's about so many things. When I was a reporter, I was a reporter for 15 years. And the best thing that I learned from that experience was humanity. Like seeing the humanity in these different parties, like the two different sides of every single issue, because as a reporter, you're supposed to go out and talk to both sides. And when you hear the humanity behind both sides, it changes. I think it really changes everything, how you see people and issues. Let's first go to impermanence, because I just think you mentioned impermanence a little bit. And when I first learned about this, maybe like a decade ago, totally changed my life because I'm just like such a clinger. I hold it on really tightly. So talk to me a little bit about impermanence and why that's important for us to know about.
Fact that everything changes and it's beyond our control. and we're clinging so hard and sort of basing all our well-being on things remaining permanent is something we need to take a pretty very strong and hard look at, because that is the source of our freedom, is seeing reality for what it is. So we start with impermanence, one, because when we truly realize that things are impermanent, we start feeling this sense of urgency. Yes, I need to work on myself. My day matters. My mind matters because my life matters. So that's one reason why we start there. But another reason also is because we've somehow sort of, with the advancement of technology, with the advancement of everything that's going on in our environments, we've sort of started believing that we can outrun time, we can be young forever, we can be strong forever, and maybe even there are so many biohackers who are talking about they'll live forever. And especially in tandem with conversation around mindfulness and meditation, which is seen as a way to live longer, control our biology, control our productivity, and things like that. So reflection on impermanence becomes so much more important now as we talk about Buddhist principles, as we talk about meditation and mindfulness, because we need to sober up and realize that things are impermanent, not just our life, our material possession, our worldviews, our relationships. And from that place, everything else becomes possible in terms of evolution, freedom of our minds, training our minds. So that's why impermanence was so important for us to talk about and also make it the first chapter of our book.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think the thing to add there too is like we all, like people say things like, everything changes or change is always happening. And that's something that is kind of out there, but the problem is that we don't actually internalize it or embody it. Because if we really accept it and we internalize the fact that everything is always changing, then we wouldn't be upset when, let's say, we got laid off, or we wouldn't be upset when, maybe when there's a breakup, because we'd realize, these are the cycles of life. These are things that happen. These are big monumental moments, but changes happening in such these like micro moments throughout the day. Your coffee ran out, like then you wouldn't be upset in that moment. You realize, that's gone now. And like, let's say, you can't go back to like whatever that past life was, like you're reminiscing about college days or your childhood. And then, so if you're able to not only understand it, but also internalize and embody it, that's where like the freedom part can begin. So, that's why reflecting on it, we reflect on it for, a whole month of January in the book is so important, because if each day you can kind of cultivate that and realize it, then even though it sounds a little bit sad sometimes to think about death, it actually is really helpful because it helps us live better now.
Yeah. Yeah. I as I was reading through so many of those days thinking about death, that's my whole fear. Like I always say I'm afraid of everything. But really I'm only afraid of things that can end in death. And I guess like for someone like me who I'm like, we can't do anything. I've got a lot of anxiety about, my kids, their safety, etc. What would be your message to like someone reeling in that space?
Important thing is to realize, of course, there are things that, oh, my kids, myself, there are safety measures we should apply. And sometimes being extra cautious can really save yourself and your children. So there's nothing wrong with that. But at the same time, when we can truly internalize that regardless of how much I protect myself and how much I protect my children, there will come a time when our time will run out. And that is something, when we think over time and reflect on it, it does help to ease that tension of trying to cling on to it, because you start realizing that no matter how much I cling on, it's not going to last. Then you can continue to be cautious, but not from that place of conviction that this is definitely going to save us, because there is no definite, right? So the fact is, end is coming. And when we accept it, it becomes sort of okay, because there's nothing to do about it. It's it's like helping yourself be okay. And this is really visually, it comes to me as you talk about this, because I was in a major earthquake, and you were thinking of all these ways, like how about going down in that beam, and then that earthquake lasted for over a month because there was like aftershock after aftershock. Then you realize I can be very smart, but if I just really envision that I could die and my loved ones could die around me, we would actually be okay. It's that not wanting to die, that tightness is actually causing me so much more pain than potentially the act of or the experience of dying itself. So I think familiarizing ourselves with death is very, very helpful. We live in a, I mean, I say we live in a society here in the West that is so separate. In countries, I come from Nepal, death is very close to us. Older generations are constantly wandering around us. We see older people all the time. Death is like a big ceremony almost. It's talked about. It's not necessarily celebrated in the sense of celebrated, but people's lives are celebrated in that, okay, you've lived old. It's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. That means you've actually made it till this far. So familiarizing ourselves with death of others and ourselves inevitably makes us more and more comfortable.
I think what this gives us is the ability to release the control that we do not have anyway. We can be cautious, but we don't actually have control.
Yeah, and one of the things I do, because I'm a little bit more like you than maybe Pema is, kind of the clinger, the one that's grabbing a little tight, is just this 2-word mantra I tell myself all the time is just let go. And so whenever I feel myself, it could be about death is the extreme one, but it's about anything, trying to control a situation, trying to control a relationship, trying to hold on to like a sunset. I say to myself, like, let go. And for me personally, that's really helped me to kind of just release that tension, even for like a couple of seconds, and kind of settle into like the actual moment and into reality. Whereas, that is where the freedom starts. And there's a quote, another one, I don't think it's in our book, but we put it on our Instagram, Chogyam Trungpa, a Tibetan Buddhist master. But he says, like, the bad news is you're falling through the air, and the good news is there is no ground. So it's kind of this idea, we're all falling, we're all kind of like going the same direction together, but there's nothing to hold on to. So, just go with it.
I was letting my mom doesn't live in town, so she hasn't, driven my kids around a lot, but she was going to drive my daughter, my 5-year-old, somewhere. And so I moved her car seat or her booster seat into the car. And I was like, oh my gosh, but what if they get in an accident? Like, I'm so nervous. And then I said to myself something like, I have to let this go. I think I said a little silent prayer as well. I was like, I have to let this go. Like, this is a healthy experience for for her grandma and my daughter to be together. And so I let it be. I walked away. And that day, when she pulled out of the driveway, she almost got hit. Like, this car came barreling down like so fast, and they were able to go out of the way, and my mom zoomed back in, and she was okay. And that's when I realized, like, I didn't have control over that, but I think I did everything within my control. My mom did everything within her control. And to release that, I think to, God for me, or the universe, or whatever, to be able to release that, I think is really powerful.
Yeah, and the thing is, we believe that our worrying or our our stress of the situation will actually help it. But what good does it do? It doesn't help the situation, and it only hurts us. So that's something we have to think about. We think, oh, if I really, grip tight and think in my mind, well, I mean, who are you serving? Not yourself and not the situation.
Right. And the worrying, I think, especially in the beginning of my parenthood, the worrying was how I was showing love. And then I was like, wait, I actually cannot be worried and still love them.
Yeah, and not to mention, you could actually be serving them by not teaching them a reality that one has to worry so much about uncertainty. And that's a whole different sort of contribution we can make by working on ourselves. Accepting impermanence is we give others, especially our children, the freedom to come to their own and experience impermanence and uncertainty in ways that are actually more accurate with reality.
One of the things, before I let you guys go, I really want to talk about was meditation, because this has become very westernized. And I loved reading that the Tibetan word for meditation, I don't know if I'm saying this right, is gom, gom, and it means becoming familiar with. And I just loved that so much because this, the Western experts will say meditation make you live longer, reduce your chances for dementia, like all those things. But I love bringing this back to becoming familiar with. Talk to me just a little bit about that.
Now, one of the biggest trouble that we all face in our lives is our minds run everything for us, our experiences, our connections, our performance, but we know very little about our own minds. It's so daunting to just be with our thoughts, which is why we put on some music or listen to something or watch something, because we just can't be with ourselves. So the first step to mastering the mind is non-negotiably knowing yourself, befriending yourself in a friendly way. Because if you try to control yourself, we've all had tried that in one capacity or the other. It never works. So meditation is just about spending time with yourself without the external distractions or stimulation. And in that, your mind can just be itself, sort of like, when we become friends with people or our partners, they can be themselves and we can really get to know them, their patterns, so we can work around them better.
Mm-hmm.
Meditation is just that. It's not this, it is lofty in a sense that it is hard and it is so profoundly beneficial, but it's not trying to control or accomplish anything. Just sitting still, being with your mind. And that also takes a lot of pressure off.
Yeah, I think one of the
Love that.
benefits too, and the word gom and becoming friend or getting to know yourself, and then I think after getting to know yourself is hopefully become friendly with yourself. I think is a good aspiration to have, but it's one of those things where with our own mind, when we sit with it, we start seeing all the different thoughts and the emotions that ping pong around in it. And by seeing that, one of the things that we start to realize in meditation is that we're not those thoughts. We're not those emotions. Those are things that are kind of happening in our mind. I mean, one analogy is typical in Buddhism is that those thoughts and emotions are the clouds that pass through the sky, and that our mind is like the open awareness of the sky itself. And so if we can start to not just think about that, but actually experience it in meditation. It's not like it happens in every session. Sometimes you spend the whole time just thinking about, your grocery list, and that happens.
Your monkey mind.
Yeah. But if you do it, consistently for years, and then you do have those like moments of clarity, although can be very fleeting. But that's one of the benefits is you see yourself. And then the other thing you can do is you can also start to see other people a little bit clearer, because then you see, okay, I'm sitting here, I have all these thoughts, I have all these emotions that are difficult. Well, look out the window, there's 8 billion other people, they're dealing with the same things. So not only can it help you to get to know yourself, but I'd say also an extension and help you to get to know other people. So that's another way to think about it.
Did we circle all the way back around to humanity? I love it. I just want to share this quote that I loved. Thoughts come and go like a thief in an empty house. In fact, there is nothing to be gained or lost. And you guys said about this, quote, your thoughts are of no consequence on their own. They are like thieves who barge into an empty house, rummage around, look for a way to disrupt things, then leave without doing any real damage, end quote. Loved that. And you also talk about watching that as a curious bystander. Okay. I'm going to let you guys go. I have absolutely loved talking to you. But first, I want to ask you the question I ask everyone, which is, what is your number one tip to finding more joy in the good, the bad, and the in-between?
I would say it is in really understanding the complexities of life and seeing that these are all parts of it. And in many ways, when we look way into the future and look in the past, we realize that those moments that were ups and downs, that was life, right? So if you come to the present moment and look at the ups and downs as this being life, we can actually be more graceful with ourselves, with the situation, and have not so much weight around it, even though, of course, hard things feel harder and good things feel easier. I think that's what I would say, that this is life happening and it's that we are alive.
One of the things that we can do is just start, come back to the last question, is becoming familiar with our mind. So if we can watch it, right, that's the beginning. And then we can start to learn about it. Then we can start to tame it, and then we can start to direct it. So to be able to find that happiness, to be able to find the joy, everything in between, our whole world's experienced up here, and I'm pointing to my head because that's where, I guess, in a Western view, they think the mind is, although there's some debate about that in other cultures. But that's where we can really have our own internal capacity to control how other people affect us, how the news affects us, how we affect ourselves. So if we can start there, try to learn a little bit about it through meditation, through some of the mindfulness principles, our life's going to get a little bit better each day. So hopefully people can try that themselves.
Yeah. Thank you both so much for the work you're doing and for coming on the podcast. I appreciate it. I hope you like this conversation. I love having conversations that feel like the opening of the heart, and that's what this conversation felt like. Of course, you can find all the information you need in show notes, and I want to thank you for being here on Happiness and Progress.